A landlord walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom believing that his property wealth placed him above basic respect. He didn't rush. He didn't look nervous. If anything, he walked in as if the courtroom were just another building he owned, and everyone inside it owed him rent. Moments earlier, he had parked illegally in a residential zone, blocked a tenant's driveway, and then argued with the responding officer as if inconvenience was only something other people felt. Now, with a citation in hand, he carried that same arrogance into the courtroom. From the second he approached the bench, his entitlement showed. A dismissive smirk, a slow shake of the head, and an attitude that said, "Let's get this over with. I don't have time for this." But what he didn't realize was that this wasn't just a traffic case. This was a collision between ego and accountability, the moment where status would meet its match and respect would prove stronger than wealth. Tell us where you're watching from. Entitlement looks the same everywhere. It was a humid summer morning in Providence, the kind where the air felt heavy and the courthouse hallways carried a quiet buzz. Inside Judge Caprio's courtroom, the atmosphere was calm, almost gentle. The kind of space where people arrived anxious but left feeling heard. But before the arrogant landlord even entered, the bailiff had already noticed him. "He's been pacing outside, like he owns the place," the bailiff whispered to a clerk. "Told someone on the phone that this'll be quick because judges don't argue with landlords." That set the tone long before his case was called. His violation wasn't complicated, an illegal parking citation for blocking a tenant's driveway during a property inspection. But what made it worse, and what landed him here, was his attitude with the responding officer. According to the report, he dismissed the officer's warnings, said he was not just any driver, and insisted that he knew how the city worked. He had no significant prior record, just a handful of minor parking issues. But what stood out was his pattern of behaving as if rules were suggestions, not laws. Even now, as he entered the courtroom, he held his phone loosely in one hand, glancing at it between sighs, barely acknowledging those around him. A slow eye roll, as his name was called. A muttered complaint about wasting the whole morning. A look that suggested he wasn't here for justice. He was here for an inconvenience he planned to brush aside. The tension in the room thickened, though Judge Caprio remained his usual calm, patient presence, preparing to hear yet another story. But this one carried a storm behind it. The moment the landlord stepped toward the bench, Judge Caprio greeted him with the same warmth he offered every defendant. "Good morning, sir. How are you today?" The landlord didn't even look fully up. "Let's just get this done, Judge. I've got properties to check on." A soft ripple passed through the courtroom, barely audible but unmistakable. A few eyebrows lifted. A couple of people shifted in their seats. Even the clerk paused her typing for half a second. Everyone recognized the tone, the kind of impatience that carried more ego than urgency. Judge Caprio, unfazed, kept his voice steady and kind. "All right," he said gently. "We'll take our time and review the circumstances." The landlord smirked. A quick, dismissive twist of the mouth. "Honestly, there's nothing to review. I had to park there. My tenant wasn't cooperating, and I'm not running around the block in the heat. It was a 2-minute stop. Any reasonable person would understand that." His tone wasn't explaining. It was lecturing. Judge Caprio folded his hands, leaning back slightly. "Well, the officer noted that the vehicle blocked a driveway and that you didn't move when asked." The landlord cut in before the judge even finished. Because he was being dramatic. It wasn't an emergency. I manage 12 units in that area. I'm there all the time. People exaggerate. Another ripple moved across the room. This time, it wasn't surprise. It was discomfort. The kind that comes when someone speaks with confidence but not with respect. Judge Caprio took a slow breath. His voice remained calm, but there was a subtle firmness now, the kind that didn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sir, I assure you, no one here is exaggerating. We're simply looking at the facts. The landlord leaned back, tapping the counter with 2 fingers, impatient and irritated. For the first time, the contrast became crystal clear. A judge who treated everyone with dignity, and a defendant who believed dignity was optional. The courtroom sat in a quiet tension, waiting for which side of that contrast would speak louder next. Judge Caprio began to read the officer's written statement, but he barely made it through the first sentence before the landlord jumped in again. Look, Judge, I already told you the officer misunderstood. Can we skip all that and just get to the fine? I have real work to do. The interruption hit like a cold draft across the room. A few heads turned. Someone in the back let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. Judge Caprio paused politely, giving the man space to settle. But the landlord didn't notice, or didn't care. As I was saying, the judge continued, the officer reports that you— No, that's wrong, the landlord snapped. They always add extra details to make themselves look good. It's the same every time. Stage 1. Interrupting the judge. Complete. The clerk's eyes lifted from her keyboard. The bailiff shifted his stance just slightly, as if preparing for what might come next. Then came Stage 2, belittling the system. You know how it is, the landlord said, gesturing broadly. Half the time these tickets are just moneymakers. I've been in court more times than I can count, and it's always the same. Bureaucracy, red tape, everyone pretending this stuff is life or death. He spoke loudly enough that the entire courtroom could hear him, and he wanted them to. Judge Caprio remained composed. Sir, we are here to ensure fairness, not to pretend. But the landlord ignored the remark, leaning forward as if he were above the entire process. Stage 3 arrived next, flaunting status. I mean, look at my record. I pay more in property taxes than most people here make in a year. I support this city. I'm not some kid speeding around. I'm a landlord. I run businesses. I bring value. He emphasized the word value as though it placed him in a different category from the rest of the room. A few people exchanged glances. The arrogance was becoming hard to ignore. And then Stage 4 landed, the subtle threat of walking out. Honestly, he huffed, checking his watch, if this is going to drag, maybe we should just reschedule. I didn't clear my entire day for this. He started to step back from the bench as if preparing to end the hearing himself. The room froze. Even the air felt different, a mixture of shock, irritation, and anticipation. Judge Caprio looked at him with calm eyes, but there was a shift now. Not anger, not frustration. Something firmer. Something that said, enough. The escalation was complete, and the breaking point was coming. The landlord took half a step back from the bench as if he truly intended to walk away. That small motion, casual to him, disrespectful to everyone else, shifted the entire energy of the courtroom. The bailiff's posture changed immediately, a subtle adjustment of the shoulders, a slight narrowing of the stance. Not threatening, just ready. Judge Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward. He simply spoke with the calm authority that had settled countless storms over the years. Sir, he said gently, please return to the bench. The landlord hesitated, surprised by the softness rather than the words, but instead of complying gracefully, he muttered under his breath, "This is ridiculous." Judge Caprio waited until the man was standing fully in front of him again. Then came the line that shifted the entire balance of power. "In this courtroom," the judge said quietly, "we don't walk away when things don't go our way. We address them with respect." The silence that followed was deep, not empty, but full. Full of realization, full of the sudden awareness that the landlord's status meant nothing here. The landlord scoffed, but it was weaker this time, defensive rather than confident. "Respect works both ways," he said, though even he didn't sound sure of it. Judge Caprio nodded. "It does. And I assure you, sir, you're receiving it. But now you must return it." The room held its breath. This wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was a correction, a reminder that ego may be loud, but authority, when calm, is louder. And for the first time since he entered the courtroom, the landlord stayed silent. Judge Caprio adjusted the papers in front of him, giving the room a moment to settle. When he finally spoke, his tone was collected. Not punitive, not irritated, simply fair. "Let's deal with the facts," he began. "You blocked a residential driveway. The officer asked you to move. You refused. That alone carries a fine." The landlord shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. His earlier confidence had thinned. Judge Caprio continued, his voice steady. "The base fine for obstructing a driveway is $100. Under normal circumstances, that would be the end of it." The landlord's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if waiting for the discount he believed he deserved. But instead, the judge's tone changed. Still controlled, but firmer. "However, your conduct today cannot be ignored. Interrupting the court, belittling the officer, dismissing the process, and attempting to leave the courtroom. These actions show a lack of respect not only for me but for everyone who walks through those doors." Murmurs moved softly through the room. People could feel what was coming. "So I'm adding an additional penalty," Judge Caprio said, "not because of who you are, but because of how you acted." The landlord swallowed, jaw tightening. "Your total fine will be $150. Not excessive, not vindictive, just enough to make the point unmistakable." Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, meeting the landlord's eyes. "Accountability," he said gently, "is not optional. Not for tenants, not for officers, and not for landlords." The words struck deeper than the fine. For the first time, the landlord's posture softened. For a moment, the landlord didn't speak. His gaze dropped to the counter in front of him. The earlier fire in his expression dimmed to something quieter, something closer to realization. The courtroom waited. When he finally exhaled, it wasn't with arrogance. It was with a kind of reluctant honesty. "Judge," he began, his voice noticeably softer, "I didn't expect this to go the way it did." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture far more human than anything he'd shown earlier. "I guess I came in here thinking this was just another inconvenience. But I can see I was out of line." The pride that had held him upright all morning now seemed to loosen its grip. His shoulders lowered, his defensiveness faded, even his tone lost its sharpness. "I shouldn't have spoken the way I did," he continued. "To you, to the officer, or anyone here. That wasn't right." Judge Caprio. I didn't smile, but there was warmth in his eyes. The kind of warmth that invites honesty, not punishes it. "I appreciate you saying that," the judge replied gently. A faint hush settled over the room, as if everyone felt the emotional shift at the same time. The tension that had wrapped itself around the courtroom slowly unwound, replaced by something lighter, something closer to grace. The landlord nodded, breathing out a quiet, humbled apology. "I'm sorry, Judge." And for the first time since he had entered, the apology was real. Judge Caprio let the apology settle in the air for a moment before speaking. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lecture. He simply let wisdom flow the way it always did. Calm, steady, fatherly. "Sir," he began softly, "life has a way of testing us when we least expect it, and how we respond in those moments says more about our character than any success or status ever could." The landlord lifted his eyes, listening. "I've met people from every walk of life in this courtroom," the judge continued. "Some wealthy, some struggling, some confident, some afraid. But the one thing that never changes is this: character counts more than currency." A few people nodded quietly. "Respect," he went on, "costs nothing, and yet it changes everything. It builds trust. It opens doors. It turns conflict into conversation." He leaned back slightly, his tone steady and timeless. "And remember this: success doesn't buy you a discount on decency. Whether you own 1 building or 100, whether you're a tenant or a landlord, the standard is the same. We treat each other with dignity." The landlord swallowed, visibly affected. "Today wasn't about a parking ticket," Judge Caprio added gently. "It was about learning that ego is loud, but integrity speaks louder." And with that, the courtroom felt full again, not with tension, but with the quiet weight of truth. Moments like this linger long after the gavel falls, because the truth is, most people have met someone like this landlord, someone who confuses authority with superiority, or believes rules bend for those who feel important enough. Maybe you've seen it at work, maybe in your neighborhood, maybe even in traffic, where entitlement shows itself in a heartbeat. But stories like this remind us of something simple and universal. Respect is not a status symbol. It's a choice. And the moment you choose it, everything changes. So let me ask you, have you ever seen someone act entitled just because they could? And more importantly, what would you have done if you were sitting in that courtroom today? In the end, the landlord learned that in Judge Caprio's courtroom, respect is earned, never bought. Not with money, not with status, not with ownership, only with humility. If you believe that justice and compassion belong together, consider subscribing. Here, we tell real stories where humanity speaks louder than anger, where the truth is delivered with kindness, and where every case reminds us that dignity is the one thing we all owe each other. Thanks for watching, and stay kind out there.